I was already old when I began to whisper these words into the silence, but in my heart, I am still the 19-year-old girl who first entered the convent gates in Buffalo in 1973. The stone walls of the chapel seemed eternal, the candles trembling in the draft, as if they carried the prayers of centuries before me. Back then, I believed that silence was safety, and obedience was salvation. But what I hid within those walls was far louder than any hymn. The first nights were the hardest. The bell would toll at dawn, summoning us to prayer. We moved like shadows, our footsteps softened by discipline. I told myself I was ready for this life, that God had chosen me for solitude. Yet even then, I carried an unease inside me, like a flame I dared not name. Was it truly God's call, or only my own fear of the world outside? When I think of Buffalo now, I remember the bitter wind off the lake, the way it seeped through the cloister windows. We wrapped ourselves in wool habits, hands tucked in sleeves, whispering psalms, while our breath clouded the air. That winter, I began to notice him. Not a stranger in the worldly sense. He was a volunteer, a man who came often to help the parish with repairs. His hands were rough with labor, yet his smile carried warmth that pierced even the cold stone around us. I should not have looked. I should not have remembered. But how could I not? I was 19, full of untested vows. Every glance, every passing word, carried a weight I did not understand. Once, he lifted a beam alone, and I caught my breath, not at his strength, but at the tenderness with which he set it down. How foolish that sounds now, and yet at the time it shook me more than any sermon. Did I already know, in that small moment, that love could grow even where it was forbidden? Still, the convent demanded silence. Mother Superior's eyes seemed to follow me through every corridor. "Guard your heart," she warned once, after prayers, though I had spoken nothing. Could she see something in me I had not confessed? Or was it my own trembling reflection she read in my downcast face? Nights stretched long beneath the chapel's wooden beams. I prayed harder, asking God to take away the stirring inside me. But the more I begged, the clearer it became. The secret was not vanishing. It was deepening, weaving itself into the very rhythm of my days. I learned then that some secrets do not die in silence. They grow. I was only beginning to understand that truth when the moment came that would change everything. He looked at me, directly, without fear. Across the courtyard one gray morning, for the first time, I did not look away. And in that instant, I knew my vows would never protect me from my own heart. That single glance became the seed of a secret I would carry for decades. I often wonder now, in these late years of my life, whether that glance was truly innocent, or whether it carried an unspoken invitation. He never said a word out of place, and yet my soul felt as if a door had been cracked open. Once that door was ajar. I could not close it again, no matter how many prayers I whispered into the night. The convent had its rhythm. Morning bells, daily mass, the hush of the library, where we copied notes from sacred texts. But my heart had begun to slip from that rhythm. I found myself anticipating his presence. He came to repair the fence, to mend the leaky roof, to carry supplies into the cellar. And each time, I lingered in his shadow longer than I should have. Why did my pulse quicken at the sound of boots on stone? Why did the simplest "Good morning, sister" linger in my chest like a forbidden hymn? Mother Superior's voice became sharper in those days. "Discipline is your shield," she reminded us. I repeated her words as a litany, but within me, the shield was cracking. I feared someone would notice the tremor in my hands, the slight delay before I answered. Was it God warning me through her voice? Or was it only my own guilty conscience echoing louder with each passing day? One evening, as snow pressed against the cloister windows, I was sent to fetch candles from the cellar. I descended the narrow stairs, my breath visible in the cold air. There, in the dim light, I found him stacking crates. He turned, surprised, and for a moment we both stood frozen. The silence was unbearable, and yet it spoke louder than any sermon I had ever heard. He smiled gently, said only, "Be careful on the steps, sister." But his voice stayed with me long after I had climbed back into the chapel's warmth. From that night on, my prayers grew desperate. I begged God to erase the memory, to cleanse the stirring within me. Yet the more I fought it, the more it rooted itself. Was it sin, or was it the most human truth of all? That even those of us cloaked in vows still carried hearts that longed to beat for another. I was 19, but my soul was already at war. My devotion to God demanded silence, but my humanity cried out for recognition. In those long nights of vigil, kneeling on the cold stone floor, I asked again and again, was I betraying him? Or was I betraying myself by denying what he had planted in me? The first crack in my vow had appeared, though no one else could yet see it. Soon, someone would, and that would change the course of my life forever. It did not take long before the crack in my vow became visible to others. Though I prayed it might remain hidden, in a convent, nothing escapes notice. We lived too closely, our lives braided together by routine and ritual. A single hesitation, a shift in tone, even the way one carried a rosary could betray a restless spirit. Mother Superior had a way of watching without speaking. Her eyes were gray, sharp as the stone walls themselves. One afternoon after we finished chanting the Psalms, she placed her hand firmly on my shoulder. "Guard your thoughts, sister," she said in a voice so low only I could hear. My heart leapt into my throat. Did she know? Or was she only reminding me of the rule that thoughts themselves could become sin if left unchecked? The other sisters, too, began to sense something. They whispered in corridors, their glances brushing against me like cold drafts. Sister Agnes once caught me near the courtyard and asked, "Why do you look outside so often, when all we need is within these walls?" I could not answer. How could I tell her that I longed for the sound of a man's laughter as much as I longed for the toll of the chapel bell? And yet, he was always there, just enough to unsettle me. Fixing a loose hinge, repairing the bell rope, carrying firewood past the cloister gate. Each time I struggled to lower my eyes quickly, as obedience demanded. But even in those stolen seconds, something passed between us. Was it only my imagination? Or had he, too, noticed the danger blooming quietly between us? The tension grew unbearable during Lent. Fasting, silence, penance, these should have cleansed me. Instead, the emptiness in my stomach seemed to make the longing sharper. My prayers were broken, distracted by the memory of his face. I feared confession, for how could I place into words the sin I had not acted upon, yet carried so heavily? One evening, I lingered too long by the cloister window. Outside, he stood speaking with Father Thomas, the parish priest. The faint light caught his profile, and my heart betrayed me. In that moment, Sister Margaret appeared beside me. She followed my gaze, and though she said nothing, I knew her silence was an accusation. Secrets cannot stay buried in holy ground. They grow roots that crack even the firmest stone, and soon the stone walls of the convent themselves would seem to turn against me. I can still recall the night when the weight of my secret became too heavy to carry alone. The chapel was dim, lit only by the thin glow of candles. The others had already retired to their cells, and I knelt alone before the crucifix. My whispered prayers trembled in the stillness. "Forgive me, Lord, for what I feel." But even as the words left my lips, I knew I was not ready to let go. Love, once awakened, does not return easily to slumber. The convent walls, once my sanctuary, began to feel like prison bars. Every corridor seemed narrower, every silence louder. The toll of the bell, meant to call me to devotion, struck me instead like a warning. I feared not only God's judgment, but also the judgment of the women around me. Their eyes lingered too long. Their whispers seemed to follow my every step. Did they know? Or was it simply my guilty soul turning shadows into accusations? It was during this time that I began to avoid him deliberately. When I heard his footsteps near the cloister, I would retreat into the laundry room, folding sheets until my hands ached. If he worked in the garden, I chose the kitchen, scrubbing pots with needless fury. Yet no matter how I fled, my heart pursued him. I would catch myself wondering, did he sense my absence? Did he notice when I slipped away? And if he did, why did the thought bring me both shame and a strange, secret joy? But the walls of secrecy are fragile things. One evening, Mother Superior called me to her chamber. The room smelled faintly of incense, heavy with authority. She did not accuse me directly, but her words were sharper than any blade. "Sister," she said, "you must remember the vows you made are not yours alone. They bind you to God, to this house, to all of us. Guard yourself. A single wandering thought can unravel a lifetime of devotion." Her gaze held mine too long. My knees trembled beneath my habit. Had someone spoken to her? Had Sister Margaret whispered what she saw at the window? Or was my own face already betraying the battle I tried so desperately to conceal? That night, I could not sleep. The stone walls felt as though they were pressing inward, suffocating me with their silence. I buried my face into the thin pillow, asking myself over and over, was I protecting my faith? Or was I simply burying a truth that would one day destroy me? And then, as if fate itself wished to test me further, the very next day I crossed paths with him, alone in the cloister garden, and for the first time, words were exchanged that neither of us could ever take back. The garden was quiet that afternoon, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and roses, just beginning to fade. I had gone there to collect herbs for the infirmary, my basket half full of mint and lavender. I thought I was alone, but then I heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel. I turned, and there he was. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The convent walls loomed behind me, yet here, in the open air, the silence felt different, lighter, dangerous. He looked at me, not with boldness, but with a gentleness that disarmed me completely. "Sister," he said softly, "you always seem to carry more weight on your shoulders than those baskets." I wanted to answer with piety, to smile politely and retreat. Instead, I found myself whispering, "Some burdens are not so easily set down." My voice trembled. His eyes lingered on mine, and in that instant, I felt more seen than in all the hours I had knelt before the crucifix. Was that blasphemy? Or was it simply the truth of being human? From that day on, something had changed. We spoke little, never more than a few words, but each word echoed inside me like a bell. I dreaded our encounters and yet longed for them. I scolded myself during prayer, but the prayers turned hollow, my lips moving while my heart wandered. Could God hear the difference? Could he tell that my devotion was slipping toward another? The sisters noticed. Sister Agnes warned me again. Your eyes betray you. Mother Superior's sermons became sterner, her gaze cutting into me whenever she spoke of temptation. I felt like a book half open, my secret scrawled across every page. I tried to close it, to lock it away, but the harder I pressed, the more it bled through. The breaking point came on a stormy evening. I had been sent to carry linens from the storeroom, and as fate would have it, he was there too, repairing a shutter rattling in the wind. Lightning lit his face for a moment, sharp and fleeting. I froze. He stepped closer, his voice barely audible above the rain. Forgive me if I've caused you trouble. I never meant to. My breath caught. I should have said nothing. I should have walked away. Instead, I whispered, It isn't you. It's me. I cannot stop what I feel. The words hung in the air, heavier than thunder, and once spoken, they could never be unsaid. And with that confession, I had crossed a line from which there was no return. Once the words left my lips, silence devoured us both. I remember the way the storm outside seemed to pause, as though even the thunder held its breath. He did not move closer, nor did he recoil. Instead, he lowered his eyes as if weighing the burden I had placed upon him. Sister, he murmured, you should not have said that. But the truth was already out, and with it came a strange sense of relief, as if my soul had exhaled after years of suffocation. I wanted to take it back, yet I also wanted him to hear it, to carry it with me. Was that selfishness? Or was it simply the cry of a heart too long silenced? The days that followed were unbearable. Every glance, every chance meeting felt charged with the memory of my confession. I prayed with greater desperation, kneeling until my knees burned on the cold chapel floor. Lord, strike this from me, I begged. Erase it from his mind, from mine. Yet each morning I awoke with his voice still echoing. You should not have said that. Mother Superior grew harsher. She called me into her office twice in a single week, questioning me about my discipline, my focus, my obedience. I denied nothing, for how could I? My face betrayed me, my hands trembled too easily. Temptation is the devil's snare, she warned, and you are walking too near it. Her words pierced me, but more terrible was the suspicion in her eyes. I feared that at any moment she might strip away my habit and cast me from the convent walls. Meanwhile, the other sisters became distant. Conversation ceased when I entered a room. Their eyes followed me in silence, sharp as knives. I had become a shadow among them, an outcast even before my secret was fully known. Did they guess? Or had someone spoken? Perhaps Sister Margaret, who once caught me at the window, had finally whispered her suspicions. The heaviest burden, however, was not their judgment. It was the chasm that now stretched between him and me. He avoided me with painful precision. If I entered a room, he found an excuse to leave. If our paths crossed, his eyes fixed firmly on the ground. And yet, in that avoidance, I felt the truth just as strongly. My confession had shaken him too. One evening, after Compline, I lingered alone in the chapel. The candles flickered low, shadows stretching across the crucifix. I asked aloud, though no one was there to hear, Am I losing my soul, Lord? Or am I finally finding the part of me you hid beneath these vows? But no answer came, only silence, thick and endless. And it was in that silence that I realized the price of my confession was not just isolation. It would demand something far greater. Soon I would learn that every choice of the heart carries a cost far heavier than I had ever imagined. The cost revealed itself slowly, like a candle guttering in a draught. At first, it was only whispers, snatched conversations I could not quite catch, but knew were about me. Then came the silences, more deliberate this time, the way the other sisters stepped aside when I entered the refectory. No one confronted me directly, yet the air grew thick with suspicion. Secrets, once born, have a way of writing themselves onto the skin. Mother Superior summoned me again. Her room smelled of old wood and incense, her crucifix casting a shadow long and thin across the floor. She studied me for a long time before speaking. "The eyes of this house are upon you," she said. "Do not bring shame into these walls." Her words felt like judgment already past. I bowed my head, but my pulse pounded in my ears. Did she know the truth? Or was she testing me, waiting for me to confess? I turned deeper into prayer, but the prayers rang hollow. Kneeling in the chapel, I felt only distance from God. It was as though my own longing had built a wall higher than any convent stone. Was this the dark night of the soul I had read about in the writings of the saints? Or was it simply the echo of my own disobedience? One night, unable to sleep, I walked the cloister halls by candlelight. The wind rattled the stained glass, casting fractured colors across the stone. I paused before the Virgin's statue and whispered, "Do you understand me? You who carried love and sorrow both." My voice cracked in the empty corridor. No answer came, but the flicker of the flame seemed to waver like a nod. It was then that I heard it. Footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, his face half lit by the candle. He looked weary, as though the same burden weighed upon him too. "Sister," he said softly, "this cannot continue. It will ruin us both." His words were meant as warning, but they cut me open with equal measures of pain and longing. I wanted to protest, to plead, to tell him that love, once awakened, could not be smothered by rules or vows. Yet my voice failed me, trapped somewhere between the discipline of silence and the desperate cry of my heart. That night, as I lay in my narrow bed, I asked myself again and again, was this my trial, meant to test the depth of my devotion? Or was it a sign that devotion without love was only half a life? Sleep never came, and by dawn, I knew. I was standing on the edge of a choice that would break me, no matter which way I turned. And when the choice finally came, it would arrive in a way I could never have foreseen. The choice came not with thunder or lightning, but with a simple letter. It arrived one spring morning, delivered to the convent gate by the parish priest. The envelope bore no name, but was handed to me with a gravity that made my heart race. I carried it to my cell, my hands trembling, my lips whispering prayers I did not fully mean. Inside was a note, written in a hand I recognized at once. The words were few, careful, as though every line had been weighed against the danger of exposure. He wrote only, "I must leave soon. I cannot remain near you without causing you harm. Forgive me, but I cannot bear this silence any longer." The paper blurred as tears filled my eyes. My heart broke with a soundless crack, as though the convent stones themselves had split. I pressed the letter to my chest, unable to decide whether it was a mercy or a cruelty. Did he flee out of fear of sin? Or because what bound us was too strong to deny? The days that followed were empty. His absence echoed louder than his presence ever had. Each corner of the convent reminded me of him. The garden, the cellar, the chapel door he had repaired. I walked among those memories like a ghost, carrying a secret love that had nowhere to rest. Mother Superior seemed to sense the change. She said nothing, but her eyes softened, as though she recognized the shadow I carried. Once, she lingered by me after prayers and murmured, "Sometimes God tests us not with absence, but with the memory of what we cannot have." Her words pierced me. Did she know the truth? Or had she herself once carried such a burden? I withdrew deeper into silence, but silence became my tormentor. Every prayer turned into a conversation, not with God, but with the memory of him. I begged the Lord to take away my longing, yet each night I awoke with his name on my lips. Was this truly sin? Or had I mistaken love for temptation all along? One evening, as dusk filled the chapel, I dared to whisper aloud, "Lord, if this was wrong, why did you let my heart awaken? And if it was right, why did you hide it behind vows I cannot break?" The crucifix above me offered no reply. Only the candles flickered, as if mocking my unanswered plea. But it was not only my heart that would betray me, for hidden things cannot remain hidden forever, and the walls of the convent carried secrets more dangerous than mine. Soon I would learn that others had been watching all along, and their silence would not last forever. It began with whispers again, but this time they were sharper, pointed like thorns. I overheard my name in the laundry room, in the cloister corridor, spoken with suspicion wrapped in piety. "She is distracted," one voice said. "Her spirit is troubled." Another murmured, "She hides something." I felt the net tightening around me. In a convent, nothing remains hidden forever. Silence itself becomes an accusation, and my silence had grown too heavy to escape notice. I kept my head bowed, my hands busy, but inside I trembled with every passing hour. One evening, Mother Superior summoned me once more. Her chamber was darker than usual, a single candle burning low. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes unreadable. Finally, she said, "Confess, child. Whatever shadow you carry, speak it now. Better to wound us with truth than poison us with secrecy." My heart pounded. I wanted to cry out the truth, that I had loved, quietly, silently, with every breath, that my vows had not killed the human heart within me. But fear bound my tongue. If I confessed, I risked disgrace, expulsion, perhaps even his reputation beyond these walls. So I lowered my eyes and whispered only, "Pray for me, Mother." She did not press further, but her sigh was heavy, like a verdict already rendered. From that night on, I knew she no longer trusted me. The other sisters followed suit. Conversations died when I entered a room. Tasks were reassigned, my duties reduced. It was as though I had become a stranger among my own kin. And yet, worse than their judgment was the hollowness within. I had not confessed, and so the truth rotted silently, gnawing at my soul. I returned often to the garden, to the places where his shadow still lingered, there alone beneath the trees. I finally admitted to myself what I had feared all along. This love, hidden and unspoken, had consumed me. Not in scandal, not in action, but in the slow erosion of my spirit. One night, unable to bear it, I knelt in the chapel and whispered into the silence, "Lord, I cannot undo this. All I can do is carry it. But how long can a soul survive under such weight?" The candles wavered as if in answer, but no voice came. Only silence. Cold, vast, eternal. And in that silence, I realized The time had come when I could no longer hide from the truth. Not from the sisters. Not from God. Not even from myself. The moment of reckoning was near, and once spoken aloud, my secret would change everything. I am old now, my hands thin as parchment, my voice trembling as I speak these words. Decades have passed since those days in Buffalo, since the stone walls of the convent pressed in on me with their silence. And yet, when I close my eyes, I am still that 19-year-old girl, carrying a secret that burned quietly inside her chest. I never spoke it aloud within those walls. I never confessed it fully to Mother Superior, nor to the sisters whose eyes accused me in silence. I buried it beneath prayers, beneath penance, beneath the rhythm of the liturgy. Outwardly, I remained faithful. Inwardly, I carried a love that never had a place to live. He left, as his letter had promised. I never saw him again. Sometimes in my dreams, I imagine his face aged as mine has aged, his hands weathered by time, his smile softened by years. Did he remember me? Or did I fade from his heart as quickly as he had etched himself into mine? That question has followed me like a shadow, even into these twilight years. I do not regret my vows. They shaped me, bound me, gave me a life of service and prayer. But neither do I regret that hidden love. It taught me something no doctrine could, that the heart does not obey rules as easily as the body does. That longing, even when restrained, carves its mark upon the soul. In the quiet hours of night, when the chapel is empty, and only the flame of a single candle burns, I sometimes whisper his name, not as sin, but as remembrance. For love, even silent love, is never wasted. It becomes part of who we are, part of the offering we lay before God. So why tell it now? Because I have carried it too long in silence, and silence can become a tomb. I am ready, at last, to lay it down, to let the world know that behind the veil of obedience, there was also a beating heart. Not perfect, not spotless, but human, and therefore loved by God all the same. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Secrets consume us if we never name them, but once spoken, even whispered at the end of life, they can finally set the soul free. This is my truth. This is the love I hid for decades. And now, at last, I release it into the light.